And I'm now happy to welcome Charles Casto. He's a nuclear safety expert and worked in Japan for a year following the Fukushima nuclear accident in 2011. Dr. Casto then served as the American government's lead nuclear representative. Mr. Casto, welcome to the day. First up, how big do you think the danger of a nuclear disaster is right now at the Zaporizhzhia power plant?
Well, thanks for having me on, Nicole. Well, the danger is it's unprecedented to have this situation. Nuclear power plants are not designed to be operated in a war zone. So it's definitely a dangerous situation that must be monitored and prepared. We must prepare for any eventuality that could happen at that station.
There has been a lot of talk, though, about the plant being quite robust, that a plane could potentially crash onto it and the structure could withstand the impact. What if a missile actually did strike a reactor?
Well, as you said, Nicole, they have been tested for that, and it would take quite an impact for anything to hurt the reactor itself. What I worry more about is the dry fuel storage that's nearby in canisters, concrete canisters at the facilities. Those can essentially become what we always call a dirty bomb and may limit the access to the facility, which would cause even more problems if the access is limited to the reactors and providing them power and water.
You demand ideas and leadership to protect the plant. Does that mean that you're not seeing enough of that?
Well, I would do more. I would plan as an extreme crisis leader. I would always get ahead of the accident. You must get ahead of it. You must expand your capabilities, and you must act faster than the accident does. So, I've called for a staging area for a rescue mission for the reactor should something happen. We learned that at Fukushima, at a staging area called J Village, away from the station, about 10 miles away from the station, or 18, somewhere around 10 to 18 miles away from the station. And I would do something similar here where you could store the diesel fuel that they were talking about. We need more diesel fuel for the emergency diesel generators, where you could store other sand, other equipment that you would use to rescue the reactor in the event of an accident.
Now, Ukraine says it might have to shut down the plant altogether. Would that lower any of those risks that you just named?
It would, Nicole. The plants operate at full power normally, and when they shut down, they still generate electricity, heat. Much as a pot on your stove, when you shut off the stove, the pot still is hot, and you have to remove that heat. But the longer you go, the more heat that dissipates and the less hazard there is. So shutting down the reactors, and the saying always is, the safest reactor is a shut down reactor.
Switching off Europe's biggest nuclear power plant, I'd imagine that's not as easy as it sounds, though. How would that work?
Well, it's easy. To shut down the reactors is easy. The electrical supply, that's more difficult to make adjustments to that, especially if you wanted to divert that electric supply. The same thing happened in Japan when you started out with 54 reactors, and eventually within a year or so, all the reactors were shut down, and the country readjusted its electrical supply to accommodate the shutdown of all those reactors. And in the Ukraine right now, unfortunately, there's not much electrical demand.
Would the workers have to stay behind? Because there is a lot of concern about them. Politicians have said that they're not workers anymore, that they are there as hostages, that they are working at gunpoint. Would people who now work there have to remain to oversee the facility?
Well, that's another option, is to have someone in the staging area that could go in and replace those operators. And the news from the IEA mission is fairly positive on that. They conclude that the operators, Ukrainian operators, are still in command of the reactors. So that's very positive there. So at this point, my position is there should be some contingency should something happen where the operators are either overly fatigued or are not able to respond to the reactors.
Now, for the situation at hand, if the electricity were to cut out while the plant is still operational, what would happen?
Well, as was talked about earlier, the emergency diesel generators would run, and they have about a 10-day supply of diesel fuel and more on the station now. And at that point, the 7% decay heat, as we call it, the decay heat would greatly dissipate. So there would be much less of a threat after that 10 days or beyond.
Nuclear safety expert Charles Casto, thank you so much for those insights.
Thanks, Nicole.